No, don't look at the homeless situation as what you see in front of you. Look at the homeless situation and what you see around it. And all I could see were their footprints in the snow and that truck sitting off in Dibs as it's snowing. And it just simplified, my gosh, we're doing exactly what we're called to do. The American dream is for everybody, but we got to figure out a way to make that American dream possible for them. I was going to have the opportunity to honor my friend and at least leave a legacy to look up to. The house is beautiful, 1,600 square foot, 4-bedroom, beautiful landscaping. House is going to be unique because we're giving veterans 12 months to work with case managers, different veteran programs. I think it also brought back was the community saying that, hey, we can do things together again. So that's walking by faith, not by sight. God has a plan, and we have to be patient through the process.
So let's get started today. We got a roller coaster of a podcast for you all. My guest today is Paul Hulse, the CEO of Just Believe. Just Believe is an organization in Ocean County. They help the homeless, disenfranchised, find housing, find temporary or permanent shelter. But beyond that, they have more of an all-encompassing type of way of helping, where they'll help them find addiction resources, mental health resources, food resources, and you name it, the whole gambit, clothing, toiletries. It's a long list of help that the disenfranchised would need that goes well beyond any sort of one individual piece of it. And a bit of why it's a roller coaster of a podcast is because the disenfranchised don't have a straight shot back to being able to being self-sufficient, and neither did Paul have a straight shot of becoming the service member that he is today and the leader that he is today. So I want to start with my first question for you is, before you did any sort of professional service work, what were you getting into back then? What were you doing before Just Believe, or before any sort of community service?
Yeah, great question. First, thanks for having me. So I guess we go back through the years. I went through grammar school, high school. I studied to be an auto mechanic when I was in high school. It was really something I was intrigued with. Was mechanically inclined, so I like working with my hands. And when I got out of high school, I was really excited, and I thought I was going to find a job that was going to fit my need. And uh, in mechanics. And, I was excited. I got with this company. It was a small outfit, and I lasted about a week. Unfortunately, they weren't energetic about the young, enthusiastic graduate that was working with them. They were more interested in how much money they could make and didn't really want to take me under their wing. I guess I wasn't a match to their liking, and without even knowing, they hired somebody else and they handed me a paycheck and said, "See you later." That really was discouraging for me. So I really started soul searching of what was my profession, how was I going to make money to sustain myself, or to have sustainability. At a young age, you're learning a lot. I had addiction issues and dealing with other stuff, but mainly having a career. What kind of career was I going to have? And I fell into plumbing, and I became a residential, commercial, industrial plumber. And I kind of just took off from there. My dad was a successful businessman for most of his life. He had a concrete business. He was in real estate. He did different things. One of the things he loved the most was selling old cars, and that hobby actually became something he did a lot of later in life. But um, for me, it was plumbing. Plumbing was my livelihood, and I fell in love with it. I used to go to work 7:30 o'clock in the morning, and I would get home sometimes 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and get up and do it again. Spend minimal time with my family. I wasn't good at raising a family. I was good at providing for one. So I didn't have all of those qualities yet as a adult male. I had a lot of lack of, new father. A lot of new things were happening in my life, and you know I found joy in plumbing. And as time rolled on, my father had come up and gave me an opportunity. I lived in New Jersey. I was struggling to survive, and he said, "Hey, come move down to Florida with me, and you can do better down there. I got a job lined up for you, blah blah blah." So I went down to Florida, and when I got down there, the only thing that changed was my address. I still had my hurts, habits, and hangups. And the only thing really changed was my address. But I fell in love with the fact of helping people. In the career of plumbing, you get to talk to people. They talk to you about their problems, and basically giving advice to people about problems that you might even be going through and trying to give them better advice that you shouldn't do because you're doing it. And as time went on, they would give me tips and stuff, 50, whatever, $100, whatever it was. And becoming off 95, I would see people with signs holding up saying, "Hey, I'm homeless. Can you help?" And I would give those guys my money that I got, the extra tip money, just to try to feel like I was doing something, doing my part in society at a young age. And I didn't really do it for the notoriety. I just did it to be kind. My dad was always kind to people, and I kind of just took that stride of kindness and just poured it into other people's lives. You see it, you do it. And that was kind of what, was the starting point for me.
Excellent. I mean, it's awesome that you didn't just, walk by or drive by. I know I always see that in New York. That's kind of one of the differences I've noticed when I was involved with the nonprofit work and charity around here, where I know the resources and I know what I can do and what I can't do, and have some ways to help. Then I go to New York City, and all those resources I did have here are not available. So I'm like, what can I do to help these people? And it's like my list is much smaller. To here's a couple bucks. But it's amazing that you'd also did take that that opportunity though to give those couple bucks. Now, as I kind of said, we have a roller coaster, and you didn't necessarily have a straight shot into doing what you do now. You had a couple, a bit of a low point in your life, right? As before you started Just Believe, or actually before you started getting into service work as a profession, as like a main, day to day work. What was going on in your life during that point in time? I know you just had the accident with your plumbing. If you want to get into that story, and then a couple other personal family issues, right?
Yeah. So in 2012, we had Hurricane Sandy came through, and in October, and we were really extremely busy. I was working as a plumber. I had come back to New Jersey, and I was really just trying to find my way back into the groove up in New Jersey. And I was going to relieve another plumber up in Manasquan. He was having a problem with these Toto toilets that he had to remove. The house was shifted off its foundation, and we had to pull all the fixtures and everything in the home so we could move the house. So my boss at the time asked me to, go up and relieve the other plumber I was in Barnegat. Earlier in the morning, I had problems with the brakes, and I had told him that there was no brake fluid in the reservoir. As I said earlier, I went through vocational school for auto mechanics. So, I have a very strong knowledge of a closed loop system, which brakes are. Not seeing anything there made a high concern for me, but I went against my better judgment and still tried to press through the day. And on my way to go relieve that other plumber in Spring Lakes, I was cutting through Spring Lakes, and I hit a tree head on at 45 miles an hour because I lost the brakes in the truck. And basically there was when I had came to, there was police around me, there was ambulances and so forth. But the only thing I remember is it was pitch black, and I saw a hand like this come out and say, "Not yet, my son." And I know I woke up, and I don't know what that meant or what that was, but I know it was something that I've never seen before. And when I came to, the first thing I could only think of was getting out of the the truck, the vehicle. And my right leg was down in the engine compartment. I threw the steering wheel off of my body, and a guy was on the left side of me, and he says, "You need to sit down." And I said, "I need to get out of this truck." And it was so strange because my Bible was open to Daniel chapter 6 and chapter 7, which is the lion's den. And if you know the story of Daniel, he was in a lion's den for 7 days, and he never got attacked by the lions. They were all around him. They didn't eat him. They didn't try to touch him or anything. And it's basically a sign of protection from God, which I found pretty interesting. And when I got out, the police put me on the ground because they had asked me, "Who's the driver of this truck?" And I said, "I am." And they were just in disbelief that I was walking around with the other people. I mean, I was bleeding and stuff, and it was coming off me. So they sat me down, and a lady came next to me, and she had a pillow, and she was cleaning my cuts with and pulling glass out of my hands. This woman, and on the pillow it said, "God's love is like a garden." And I laid down and I held on to that pillow, and it was such a strange moment in my career, in my life. I guess it woke in my faith even stronger because of what transpired on that day. And I was brought to the hospital. They put me against the wall. It was like a brick wall, and the brick wall basically, in my opinion, was gone. And a guy came over in a Rastafarian hat and had picked up the clipboard, and he looked at it. He looked at me. He looked at the clipboard. He put the clipboard back down on his hand and said, "You're going to be all right." He put the clipboard back and he walked back, and the wall came back. And I was like, "I need a drug test right now. I need a drug test. I don't know what just happened, but I need a drug test." They're like, "What's the matter, Mr. Hulse?" I said, the wall went down. This guy with Rastafarian, he took that clipboard and blah, blah, blah. I was freaking out. And so they gave me a drug test, of course, blood and blah, 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 and brought me in a room. The cop came in and he closed the door real slowly, was acting really strange. And he sat down and he says, "Okay." He says, "I've been a police officer for 20 years. And he says, "I don't know how you survived this accident." He says, "Whatever God you believe in, keep believing." And from that day, I took that with stride because it was really like, we all have these moments in faith and we don't understand why things happen or why it happened or who it happens for or why it happens. But at that moment, my faith grew even stronger, not because of what happened, but what did happen. Um, and I knew the only reason that God had a plan for my life. It was really true that foundational piece that, like, oh my God, like, he has a plan for me, plans to prosper me and not to harm me, a hope in the future, Jeremiah 29:11. And, I really just felt that. I was just like, wow, like, I must have a purpose here because I'm still here. Um, Shortly after that accident, you know, I really just, just kind of I had a hard time getting back in a vehicle. I had a hard time doing lots of different things, and I never really fully recovered over my injuries. And that following year, in March of 2020, or was 2013, my brother-in-law died at the Red Roof Inn on the third floor from an overdose. And they found him in room 318. My uncle Sean used to be part of the EMS in Toms River, and he was one of the guys that was there. His mom was in such disbelief that she actually had to go identify his body in the morgue. So that's what I did. I went and actually identified my brother-in-law, and I prayed over him because I didn't know what else to do. I mean, here I am standing over a body in a box that just showed his face, and that was all that was left, that image of him. And so I prayed over him, and you know, life continued to move on. In October of that year, I lost my job as a plumber. I couldn't revive from my injuries and dealing with the post traumatic stress of losing my brakes. So there was a lot of different things. I lost my job October 5th. 5 days later or so, I watched my sister take her last breath when she died. My sister died. Basically, she stopped doing dialysis and the different things that she needed to do, my sister Melanie. And it was the most devastating thing I had to witness in that year. I could say the worst year of my life was probably 2013. Losing two close people in my life that grew up with me very closely, and it was very hard for me. You know, it was like almost like, man, this is what did I do? What did I do to deserve such a travesty? And I was like, well, maybe something will come up, something will come better. So a friend of mine, he got a boat, and he asked me to help him go down with him to Florida, and you know help him with his boat and get it down there with his dad. He wanted someone to come with him. So I went. I said, okay, yeah, no problem. So I was down there. I had a workman's comp case at the time, and workman's comp said, oh, look at him. He's working on the boat. He's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. So then I had to deal with all that drama, which totally was horrendous on top of everything. So it was like the snowball after snowball after snowball. And when I came back, my wife's like, you need to get in grief share. She's like, you're losing you're not moving in a good direction. I'm just concerned with your well-being, losing both your brother-in-law and your sister within the same time frame. So I got in grief share, and at that moment when I got in grief share, Valerie and Jeff Beckett, they became my spiritual parents. They really just redirected me back to Jesus and my mission to help the homeless. This is what you were called to do. Like Jonah, Jonah was like, I'm not doing this, man. I'm out. I'm not. This ain't what God called me to do. He's crazy. I'm not going to help the city of Nibia. And I kind of felt the same way. Like, God didn't call me to help the homeless. I can't even help my family. How am I going to help a bunch of other people that are suffering and going through everything? And how am I going to help them? I can barely help them, my family.
And
I
now you're
can.
kinda going through the same, right? Suffering and trying to find a way to help yourself.
Yeah, and it was exactly. And as I started doing it, that was like kind of like the revelation of it all through Valerie and Jeff was, Christ suffering. He still helped us, and that's really what it really just resonated in my heart again. And I started getting back into it, and I started helping the people that were in Lakewood, Tent City, and it really started thriving. There was a guy, Mike McNeil, and he was really trying to get these people into housing. He had 12 months of housing for a lot of the people that were in Lakewood, Tent City, and everybody wasn't helping the guy that had the housing. And I was like, this guy has the keys to maybe giving these guys an opportunity. Whether it's going to happen and they're going to fail or succeed, let's give them a shot. So I started just helping Mike, and it really just really how it evolved. And then I met this guy Bill Southry through Carol Latif, and she ran the Ocean County Hunger Relief, and Bill and I, kind of hit it off. I asked Bill for a van, and he said, "Yeah, no problem. I'll bring it to you the next day. I'll be there at 10." He showed up at 2, but he did show up, and we started to form a relationship, Bill and I. And that year in October, we formed Haven Beat the Streets. And Bill said, "Hey, when you get to where I feel comfortable enough, I'll make you the CEO with Haven Beat the Streets and hand it off to you as my protege." And it was a handshake deal, like, all right, cool, man. I love it. I think it's great. I love the opportunity to just
Mhm.
continue to help people and learn, So Bill really taught me a lot. He taught me how to think outside the box. He taught me to don't look at the homeless situation as what you see in front of you. Look at the homeless situation and what you see around it. Why is that person in it? What was really the circumstance that caused it? It's not what you see, what's in front of you. It's always what's around the person that they don't see. And
Mhm.
that's what he kind of
Yeah.
taught me. And then, you can't replicate help for other people. And a lot of times that's what people like to do is they like to push out a cookie cutter type of help. And the real reality of it all is there is no cookie cutter help. It is everybody's different. They're all unique. And you have to look at the help that they need in different sizes. Like you said earlier, mental health, addiction, maybe it's financial support, maybe it's just talking. Sometimes I've had times where I've been on the phone with somebody for an hour and they just felt like a big weight lifted off of their shoulder just because I had a conversation with them. And it just grew from that time on. It really evolved into something great working with Bill, because I did Atlantic County and Ocean County at that time from 2014 till 2000, I guess 19, I would say, before I started Just Believe.
So sorry, getting a little choked up actually on one of those things because I've had those calls, where you're just talking to someone for an hour and it's like nothing as far as nothing comes out of that conversation, but at the same time, you just changed like their entire day for the better, and you know it too, even without having actually solved a single problem. It's amazing that talking thing really is. They sometimes they just need to be heard. In fact, all the time. I think actually, tell you the truth, right? Yeah, I just want to touch go back to that Bible thing. That was in the car? It was turned to Daniel in the Lion's Den, or is that just like at home that Bible was turned to that page at the time?
No, it was on the dashboard of the vehicle, so it actually was open up to Daniel chapter 6 and 7 on the dashboard of
Yeah,
the van.
yeah, that's definitely something that will put some faith into your life in a way. That's definitely interesting.
It
Um,
was
yeah,
true
for sure.
story.
So as we get into starting Just Believe, and actually I think as it kind of goes into that Haven Beat the Street because you kind of I guess took that process and also recreated it in what you do with Just Believe. But I'll let you kind of go into that. As Just Believe is now, today, what's making it different? What are the processes that you work with? I know you said that there's no one cookie cutter process, but I know there's some sort of uh, system that you use that makes a little difference with Just Believe. Yeah, you want to give us your rundown of what you've created over the years with Just Believe since what 2019 roughly is when it started.
Yeah, Bill, we're getting ready for transition for Haven Beat the Streets to be turned over to me as the CEO. And in June of that year of 2019, they had a private meeting, and then they nominated a different man for the CEO position. And I was totally devastated from the decision because I was like, this was what we were working towards for the last 5 years, and I really felt betrayed. And I felt jaded. I felt a lot of distrust in our conversations, not just conversation one time, but multiple conversations over the years. And I wanted to stay true to who I was and not move on emotions. So I was trying to work through it, but the new CEO wanted to move into reentry, different things that I wasn't wanting to be part of because it wasn't the core mission of who I am and how I was sent. My job was always to help the homeless and disenfranchised out of homelessness. And I didn't feel a connection in the reentry part because I didn't really feel that's where my heartbeat was. Not saying that it's not a need, I just didn't feel that connection. So, right around July or so, I had a meeting in the
Can you go into reentry? 'Cause it's not a term I'm necessarily familiar with, so I'm sure others aren't too.
So reentry is basically people that are coming out of prison is programs that are developed to help people to reacclimate back in society through jail. That's basically what they
Kind of like
are. Yep, like halfway houses and stuff like that. And it's just not something I wasn't called to do. And I knew
mm,
that, and I just knew it wasn't my heartbeat. So I had a meeting in
yeah, it's like
July.
systemic type of homelessness rather than the homelessness from the chaos of life.
Yeah, exactly. It's a total different aspect. So in July of 2019, I had a meeting in First Assembly of God Church in the basement with a group of fellow like-minded people, and I brought up the idea of basically starting another nonprofit. They were on board with it. We weren't sure of the name, so that Sunday I went into church and and I said, I started praying and I asked God, I said, God, I said, what are we supposed to name it? He's like, I've already given you the name. Open your eyes and look at the altar. And that year their theme was believe. For 2019 was the theme for the year, and lit up on the altar it said believe. So I knew right there what the name was going to be, and we started doing a search for Just Believe, and we came up with Just Believe, a New Jersey nonprofit corporation. And Patty Barnes and her husband said, look, we're going to help you out, and we're going to pay for all the fees for to do all the filings for the IRS for you, get you the bylaws set up and all that stuff, or we'll take care of it with the board members, et cetera, et cetera. And they did exactly what they said they were going to do. So in the transition of that, Bill was aware that I was starting to move out, and I gave him all back the keys. He said I could use the truck and then decided I couldn't use the truck. So he took the truck, and basically I started Just Believe with nothing. So I didn't have any money, anything but faith. I just believed that God called me to do what I was doing. And the few of people helped me pay my rent for the first few months for my home, helped me take care of some of my bills. They were all there for me. They wanted to see this happen. They believed in the mission. They believed, and it really just was so inspiring to see the love that came around the situation and evolved. My dad helped me with getting the insurance on my car, registration. My uncle donated a car to me, so I had a car, and I just started it with a little Porter Escort. Is how I started Just Believe. I didn't have anything else. I didn't have much of anything but a hope and a dream. We got the contract for Tom's River to do Code Blue. We continued that, and we just continued to keep fighting. And Just Believe just started evolving. More people got gravitated to that grassroots feeling, of restoring hope in humanity. And through the years, it went through a lot of trials and tribulations. The organization, I can't sit here and tell you that it's been seamless and it's been easy. I think at every brink and every turn, there's been difficulties and challenges. But what I could say is every challenge that I've faced, I've overcome every one of them. And it's not because I do it on my own, but I rely on the people that I'm surrounded by. Because it takes the community, it takes the people that are entrusted in you, and that's why today, it's 6 years later. Uh, we have a expanded thrift store. We have an administration building standalone now, and we built a home for veterans, a sober living home that can now provide 12 months out of the year service versus us just doing Code Blue, where we were only able to do it for 5 months out of the year, which is a great program that we did for a long time. Code Blue is basically when the temperatures drop below 32 degrees in Ocean County, you can open up as a warming center, which is a basically low barrier shelter, and bring people in, give them food and a warm place to stay. Us, we took it further when we were doing Code Blue. I did it for 8 years. We did clothing, food, resources, showers with the YMCA, whatever we could connect people to get them out of homelessness. That's what we were looking for. I wasn't looking to be a babysitter. I was looking to give people a solution, and that's what I continue to strive for today. We took this year off for Code Blue, so we could focus on Larry's home and get it off the ground. And if I'm meant to go back into Code Blue next year, I will. But right now, foresee us moving towards more sustainable housing type models and also building a permanent shelter in Ocean County at some point. Whether the county does it or not is irrelevant to me. I want one for Just Believe.
Now, the Cold Blue is one of the first kind of programs that Just Believe put together. Then, like formal programs.
Yeah, so I actually started it in 2015 in Pat Sharkey's church down in Barnegat, and I only got to operate it for 3 days. But it was such an inspiration because the first night it snowed, and Long Beach Township brought in a 67-year-old woman into the center, and all I could see were their footprints in the snow, and that truck sitting off in Didsis as it's snowing, and it just simplified that. Oh my gosh, we're doing exactly what we're called to do. This is what we need to be doing. We need to establish something that when it's cold, when it's wet, when it's temperatures are devastating, we need to be able to help these people. And to be one of the founders of starting Code Blue in Ocean County with Pastor Marsha and Rob Lawson. God rest her soul. Pastor Marsha had passed away a few years or so ago, and she was one of the founders with me. And they were inspirational in 2017, 2018 when we started this thing, and what it grew into today. Last year they had 6 sites. I think this year they only have 3 or 4 sites because we're not involved. They had I don't know what. It always changes every year, but it's time for Ocean County to step up to plate and have a permanent facility. There's no reason why they shouldn't. They're finding all different ways to build buildings for welfare and for WIC programs and all these different programs, where they're not finding ways to build a building for their most needed population that they have in their own community, which is the homeless population.
Right, and I'm not sure if it's the only county, but I wouldn't be surprised. Because I know our neighbor, Monmouth has several, right? So it is surprising. Actually, I remember hearing that for the first time maybe 5 years ago. And when you're not involved in anything of this, you would think, hey, there should be a shelter, right? You would just assume. Then you find out there isn't. It's like, how? Why?
Uh,
Um, mm,
Yeah, I mean it's strange too because one of the things that we are hearing, and I don't know if it's fact or myth or if it's true or not, but supposedly now there's an agency buying up private homes and communities to put homeless people in. I don't know how well that's going to work or not work, because they're trying to figure out if we do small cells throughout the community, we'll be able to govern the population. But who's governing the houses if you're putting in people that aren't ready to be in housing yet? So those are my concerns. Is yes, it sounds like a good idea, but is it a good idea if they never really had sustainability with all the barriers they're carrying? Rapid rehousing is what the model is. People always look at as, okay, let's get them in rapid rehousing, and then we'll get them in housing, and then we'll wrap the service around them. The big problem with the rapid rehousing is they don't always accept the services once they're in. So now here we are, we get people in housing. Yay, we got them in housing, but now
but
they
there's no
still have all the
transition, right?
there's yeah, there's no real transition because we haven't solved any of the problems that they're dealing with. There should be steps to that, and we want to just go from point A to point B without, doing it correctly, with having that step A, B, C, D, we want to just do A to B and then that's it. Okay, we fixed it. We went from they were homeless, now they're in housing, and we're going to work service around them. That sounds like a great idea, but it's not always the case for many of the folks that we work with, especially our chronic population. They need a little bit more extensive help, and there might be other means that they do need that they're not getting. And, we could run into trouble down the road not paying attention to the things because we're just looking at numbers and not people's lives. It's not about numbers, it's about how well can we serve them so they don't come back. You give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he'll live forever because he knows how to do it. And sometimes you got to retrain people in life, because they forget, because they've been set in their ways so long in difficult circumstances because they were in survival mode. And when you put them in, and that's one of the things I learned from Lakewood Tent City was my big learn, because I worked with that population because we housed 68 of the 125 with steps, Mike McNeil. And that's one of the things I picked up on right away is a lot of the folks weren't ready to be acclimated yet. So they had a lot of barriers and, trying to get, different, mental health agencies and, substance abuse and all these different things. There was so many barriers to deal with at such a large amount of time. It made it very difficult with how much time you had to work with the people. If you got 20 people and you're trying to work with them within 12 months and they all have different characteristic barriers, you might not get through all of their problems in an ample amount of time because that's a lot of people to serve in 12 months, and
There's a
trying
lot
to
of personality differences you have to kind of work around too. I kind of as you're saying that on paper sounds great, their program, but then you kind of realize a lot of this resources that they're offering and that would help them fully transition don't get taken, as you said, and whether that's because of they think they don't need it or they don't want it for the thousands of reasons of their psychiatry that went that changed over their experience. I actually remember a podcast you did with Chef Lou for nonprofit I'm a part of, the Chef Lou's Army, and you said it really well that no one grows up wanting to become homeless. They always want to say when they're young want to be a firefighter, want to be a space astronaut, but no one's like I want to be homeless, right? And then you'll see someone try not accepting help that's being offered them, not accepting the food aid, not accepting food stamps or financial assistance, and you're wondering why is that. I forget what you had said back then in that podcast, but that's why I want to bring this up so you kind of bring so you can mention your experience of that, and how like the experience that they go through in homelessness really changes their opinion of help, I guess, in a way.
yeah, it's a lot of the times people just feel like they're a data number, I mean, you're like, oh, you're just going to put me in the system and then I'm just going to be a number. And then, where does my information go? And that's what a lot of the folks that are homeless I see that come across a lot of times. And it's like, we have to capture the data so we can help you to show that there's a need in the community so we can try to get you into your next step. We don't know what it's going to be. And people have the right to refuse help. I had individuals that different individuals throughout time, that I've worked with that you know, you get them right to the door, uh, and they say that, "Oh, the house is too small," or, "Oh, I don't like the area," and I always have to say to them, "This is a house for right now. This isn't a house forever." Meaning that this is your first step into housing so we can move you into the next housing. You want to go from point A to point B. You don't want to take those extra steps to get to the proper place that you can move yourself to. There's no goal. Your goal is all or nothing. If you have an all or nothing goal, you're never going to get there because you have to be able to take the step. A ladder doesn't have one step at the bottom and one step at the top, and you can go from the bottom to the top. You have to take each step. You can't just go and miss a couple steps because you're never going to get to the top rung. You have to take each step one step at a time. And that's what I always try to teach everybody that we work with, even my case managers. When you're talking to individuals, we got to take our steps. And a lot of people don't like that because they want it like a microwave. It says 2 minutes. So if it's done in 2 minutes, it's got to be done. And that's what people expectations are, even if they're homeless or not. Or no, that ain't, that ain't for me. It's like, we're not trying to force you in anything. We're trying to give you the bigger picture. Remember what I said earlier? People are looking at what's in front of them, not what's around them. And that's what happens a lot of time is people don't look at their circumstances in that way. They look at it like, well, I can't live in that way. But wait a minute, you're living in your car, you're barely taking a shower, you can't hold a job because you can't take a shower, you can't hold hygiene, but yet you won't move into a house that isn't up to your standards because it had dirt on the floor, or the walls weren't painted appropriately, or the house needed to be cleaned, or it might needed an exterminator, which we could have got for you. Their neighborhood isn't ideal for me. Well, I totally get what you're saying, but this isn't forever. This is for now. And we always have to look at it that way. Like, one is I don't want you to move into a dangerous situation, but two, you have to look at every variable because what you're living in now is probably 10 times more dangerous because you can't lock your doors. You're hiding behind windows, or you're living in a tent in the woods. How safe are you truly in a tent in the woods? Like, you say you're safe, but if a tree falls down, on which we've had happen in 2018, where a gentleman was staying in the woods and it broke his pelvis, he nearly got killed. If the guys weren't out there with him and they did come into code blue, he would have died out in the woods that night. the tree fell on him and broke his pelvis. He was asleep. He had no idea. He just felt the tree come down on top of him. The fire guys had to cut it off him. I
Oh, wow.
mean, um, it was pretty severe, and it could have been a different story that we heard. And that's the dangers of staying out in the woods. That's why I'm against tent living, not because it's something that we shouldn't be doing to begin with in Ocean County, but it's dangerous. There's danger that can happen out there. And then and communal living, yeah, it's great. What happens when your neighbors don't get along and then they start fighting and then start throwing stuff at each other and then doing different things? And now there's cops coming out and there's harassment charges. And, you have all of these different goods and bads of everything. The American dream is for everybody. It just looks different for everybody too. That's the real reality. Like it's, everybody deserves a home, but we got to figure out a way to make that American dream possible for them. Maybe it is a subsidy. Maybe it's just getting them back on their feet. Maybe it's they just need a car so they can get to work. Maybe they need their car fixed so they can get around. Maybe they just need an extra push or somebody to be straightforward with them and say, dude, you're not doing the right thing. You need to change what you're doing because we're afraid that, oh, we're going to offend somebody. No, you can't be afraid to offend somebody. You got to tell them the truth. Whether they want to hear it or not, it's like, hey, dude, like I didn't create your homelessness. I wasn't the one that caused it. Your circumstances, your life, whatever you were going through is what put you there. I'm only here to try to help you out of it. You know, am I going to have all the answers for your life? Probably not, but I could try really hard to help you and guide you to the places that might be able to help. There's no guarantees that we're going to get you out of homelessness, but we've done a good job of doing it. Last year, 228 people we got out of homeless, including families. This year, 118 people, including families. Um, you know, is it because we're great? No, it's because we're great at finding the resources around us to plug the people in so they can get the help they need. That's how it works. And if you want to get help and you truly want your life changed, you have to be part of the process together. You can't have one oar rowing and the other one just standing still. It's like the boat's just going to keep going
Right,
around
in
in
circles.
circles. And that's what a lot of times happens with a lot of the folks. I have folks that I'm working with right now that are trying to blame us for their homelessness because they don't know how to get out of it. So the only way that it's not my fault, it's everybody else's. And that's when you know that they're in trouble because it's like, whoa, wait a minute here. Last time I checked, I'm not in your situation. I'm trying to help you out of it, but you're not listening.
You
You
have to be
lead
an active player in anything, right?
Yeah, you lead a horse to water, but they're not willing to drink. It's not What can you do? You can only sit and wait. You throw the
Mhm.
life raft out, but if they're not willing to grab the life raft that you're throwing because they don't like the flavor of it, well, it's not compelling enough, or it's not the, like I said earlier, like, oh, the house is too small or the this or that. If you're looking for the perfect place, that's not what's going to happen every time for everybody. And that's the part that's frustrating as the agency, because you want to see the best for somebody to get to that next step, but sometimes they can't see it themselves, you know.
Mhm. No, yeah. I mean, I've got that definitely same experience here with just food. So the chef was on me where more specific to just feeding people with meals. Yeah, I can't imagine it being multiplied because it's frustrating as you said when you have this ability, you have the help, and even beyond food, you have these other resources that are directly made to address what they're going through. But they just didn't want to do the work or they don't want to hear it and they just want the meal. Yeah, it's frustrating. I definitely thank you for sharing it too, because it's not the part that many organizations talk about. It's not the part that's warm, fuzzy, and gets people gung ho. We're doing a great job and doing great things. It's part of that. I went to some marketing expo, and this nonprofit said the slogan "Do better." We need to all know this word slogan "Do better" for our own organization. Finding criticism out there from people not involved in your own organization or nonprofit work is hard. They're all going to say you're doing great work, you're doing a great thing, you're doing God's work, and positive, positive, positive. But there's still more to do. So if it's not you, your own organization saying we need to do better, there's no one else saying it. So yeah, thanks for sharing your parts of the I don't call them shortcomings of the nonprofit industry or your service industry, but challenges for sure. That's definitely. And also, thanks for sending some of those statistics. That was actually my next question. How many people have you get an idea of how many people have been helped? And the difference that you provide that puts up those numbers. So I can skip that question. Thanks. So the next thing I want to get into is what you're doing now, and that's Larry's Home. Larry's Home just opened up, what, 2 weeks ago, I believe, officially did the ribbon cutting. Love to if you want to share that story. I know you had Larry's mom there. It sounded like a nice emotional moment in a positive way, which we want to cherish those when you can. Um, yeah, how did that idea start of Larry's Home? Tell us a little bit about Larry and the event.
Yeah, great question. Great introduction to that area. Yeah, so Larry and I have been friends since geez, I was about 10 years old when I first met him. And he's a little younger than me. He was probably about seven or so. And, we've been friends for over 30 years. And, Larry and I shared a special bond. He was one of those friends that you just never argued with. You always had a good conversation. And we had slogans on how we introduction to ourselves. I can't say his publicly because it's derogatory, but I could say what he said when he called me, which was Paulie. He always when he called me. And um, and when he first time when he was in Iraq, and he was when he went overseas, and he called me, it was really an interesting moment. I was on my way to work. I was a plumber at the time, as you know. I was working for Lamino Plumbing, and I was right about at Manahawk. I remember the spot and everything, and I answered this weird call, like this weird number came across, and it was him on the other line, and it was refreshing, one, to know that he was alive, because I knew he was there. But to him to kind of just say, I can't tell you where I am, was kind of funny. And we talk from time to time after that. He's like, is it all right if I call you? And I said, absolutely. I'd love to hear your voice. And it was special both ways, because one, I got to hear from him, and two, we got to hear from somebody from home that he was close to, like me. And it's different when you grew up with somebody. You need that friendship, you need that bond. And no matter what he was going through, we always had that time. And I helped him multiple times get into different rehabs, or encourage him to go into rehabs, because he was in a VA. And he would always do really well, get in and do really well. And then as soon as he got out, he would wind up in either back with mom, or back where he was living, or he would go into an Oxford house. And it just never worked for him, because, he has all these different triggers and traumas. And, in an Oxford house, they didn't really understand him. And, it really just um, was hard for him to get acclimated back into society, away from that life. When we lost him in 2022, his mom told the story best. She had asked me to come by with a pickup truck and help her clean out his storage locker, and I found his ruck boots. And I had got the property from Christy and Brian Leary, back in 2021, and I was going to do a sober living home. I just didn't know that in 2022 Larry was going to pass away, and I was going to have the opportunity to honor my friend, and at least leave a legacy for his mother to look up to, instead of having the memory of her son as someone she lost to addiction. It was really really neat to say, promise made, promise kept, on my part. To honor my friend Larry, his family, was really a special moment. And the house is beautiful, 1,600 square foot, 4 bedroom, a 2 bath house, with the whole house generator, beautiful landscaping, and it's just a beautiful home. It was the dedication, which we did a few weeks ago. And we're working on licensing right now through DCA, which takes a little time to get our license. Once we get our license, then we can start the application process and start getting residents vetted, and hopefully get them in. First person we're looking for will be the house manager, and they have to be a veteran. So they have to be somebody that served our country, whether it was on the civilian side or they were deployed. That's what we're looking for. Our house is going to be unique because we're giving veterans 12 months of time to work with case managers, social workers, different veteran programs within the community. Obviously, the American Legion has pledged their part. They've decorated a room. Ma Deuce Deuce, which is a suicide prevention local group, ran by Dennis Adesso, Jay Hayden, heavily involved veterans that are poured their heart into this with us. And Andy Jackson, obviously the former commander of the state of New Jersey for the American Legion, has poured his heart into this project. And it's just so nice to see the veteran community coming together. Even Renee, who was part of the prosecutor's office as a sergeant, she's now retired. She also, and I don't know how to say her last name, otherwise I would pronounce it. But she also, her brother was in the army, and she decorated one of the rooms, which is the main room for the house manager. And her brother is currently, I believe, in active duty or just retired from the army. So I'm just nice to see the camaraderie of all the different groups come together from Westlake's veteran group in Jackson, all the different partners. It's been a phenomenal journey with the house. And it made me, I would think from my perspective, it's humbled me as a leader because you dream to do something, and then when you actually dream and you see the reality of that dream come to pass, it changes who you are. And it changes what you believe in yourself about. Like, I don't look at something and say, I'm gonna do something and never do it. I said I was gonna build Larry's home and I did it. I think when I say I'm gonna build a homeless shelter, people are going to look at me a little different now when I say it,
Mm.
because they're going to look at me and say, this dude is going to do it because he did it already. And I think that's the value that the home did for me. I lost my father obviously this year, August 21st. And one of the things good too with Larry's home is my dad helped me build Larry's home. One of my friend Hank and my friend Brian, we all grew up together. Brian's an engineer, and Brian, he helped guide me with the engineering parts and all that stuff. And then my friend Hank, he's a professional carpenter, and he just helped guided me in some of the carpentry areas, which was really great too. And we rekindled our friendships, which was really great because we haven't talked in a long time. The groups of friends. So Larry's home brought together back friendship. It brought back hope to the veterans here in Ocean County. And one of the other things I think it also brought back was the community saying that, hey, we can do things together again. That was really special, and I hope the momentum continues.
That's awesome, especially that together. Since you're talking about that rapid rehousing, I wanted to mention that it sounded like each of those are individual, families or individual people rather than, 12 veterans together that are going through the same sort of thing together. It can be a camaraderie, be a support group for that similar experience, which I can only imagine is like night and day difference as far as the success, of that type of transition would be. Uh, the other part of that is you kind of just mentioned your whole ladder analogy again too, because I'm sure Larry's home didn't happen as one step, one from the bottom to the top. There's plenty of rungs you had to go through to get there. And each of those rungs is a lot of more confidence and a lot more just another cookie in the cookie jar, so to speak, that the next big jar that you say you can build, it'll happen because you've done it before. You've got that whole, list of accomplishments, list of small tasks that were done to get there.
Yeah, well, the people that help you do it, they see the value in what you say that you're going to do, and people want to be part of change, and I think that's the true meaning of it all. Like, we all want to do what's right for humanity, and our veteran population, especially in Ocean County, has been quietly, unfortunately, ignored to the most part, with when it comes to housing. And yes, they're building the Tunnel for Towers is going to be built within the next few years or so, which is a beautiful project in Beechwood or Bayville or wherever that is. But it's never going to take the place of a grassroots, meaningful organization. Just like Tom's Retreat right down the road, he's got a big, huge mansion where he does big events for veterans. And, it's just a beautiful thing where you see everybody trying to put their part in and do something. And here's this little grassroots organization, as Just Believe is, saying, "Hey, we're going to put our stamp in the veteran arena because we believe in what we're doing for change, and we want to honor our veterans, and we want to instill this legacy." My board was like, "Absolutely." They didn't even blink an eye when I told them I wanted to dedicate the home to Larry's thing. Inside, there's a beautiful mantle with Larry's ruck boots. I got him bronzed in California. It was such a good thing for his mother to have, losing both of her boys. And I think that Larry's honor and legacy will live on, and when his son hopefully gets the chance to see what one of his good best friends did for him, he can come by and check out the house that honors his dad, and see that his dad wasn't always a bad guy. There was a good guy in there at one point that struggled with many demons, and that's my hope.
You change the world of a lot of these people you help individually because everyone actually has sort of their own what's the word, I suppose, their own view of the world, right? Their own way to look at it, their own angle. And I hear so many people in my work say, I don't want to go change the world, right? I don't want to go through that work. I want to just go home, want to go raise my kids and take care of them. But they kind of don't realize sometimes that if those kids are your world to you, and all those interactions that they're about to have, they're gonna be positive, they're gonna be negative, right? So just like Larry's mom, had Larry, and I'm sure she was her world to him, to her, and the interactions that Larry's had with you marked you positively, and then have led you to do what you're doing right now to make these veterans homes and make your mark on the world as you're doing. So, and one way or another, Larry did change the world in a positive way, just through the cycle of you and interactions with you, and in turn, Larry's mom changed the world too. So, I always think that's a different perspective. That's the word I was looking for. A perspective that a lot of people don't really take on that word, the world. So, I want to mention that. Next thing, I kind of want to get into. Now, Larry's home, we kind of talked about what it's the point of it. So transition housing for veterans. You got the camaraderie, you got the place for social work. You've done quite a few accomplishments. The thing that always, and you've said this, I think, in this podcast, you said in the last podcast with Chef Lou too, but you walk by faith, not by sight, right? I think that's kind of the words you use, your phrase. I find that amazing that you've been able to not force, I guess, these types of events happening, but you've listened to your faith and listened for the opportunities that are coming across you and took the right ones, I suppose, in one way or another. And here we are now. The story I want to mention about this, it's a bit of a fable, and actually it's kind of like what you mentioned in some of the stories. Is a man, you might know the story too better than I do, but there's a man drowning, right? Or he's on a raft stranded, and some dolphin comes by and wants to take him to shore and kind of signals to him, or maybe it's a magical dolphin actually speaks English. I can't remember the story. But the guy says, "No, God's going to take care of me. I'll wait for God to save me from this raft." Another hour goes by, then like a turtle comes by and says this sort of the same thing. I want to rescue you. I'll take you to shore. Hop on my back. He says, "No, God's going to save me." Right? Then a fisher boat comes by. Same thing. Refuses the help. It's not the help he's looking for. God's going to come save me. Later on, he drowns. Meets God at in heaven, and it's like, God, what the heck? You didn't come save me. I sent you that dolphin. I sent you the turtle. I sent you the boat. Why didn't you take these opportunities? So since then, and as I try to learn what faith means to me too, right? I kind of look at that is maybe what it is. Maybe faith is just knowing that these opportunities are coming your way and being able to realize them and take advantage of them and take those offers. So I want to ask if that's in line with what you view with your faith. You've definitely practiced faith a little more than I say I would have personally. And yeah, what's faith mean to you? I guess it's kind of what I'm asking.
It's a great question. I mean, I think it's so hard when you're a leader and you're really looking for guidance. You have a board of directors, and you have plans, and you have strategies, and you have different things that you want to accomplish in the year. I don't know. I don't really have. I really can't explain faith because it's just you can't explain it. You just know that you're supposed to do it. And I think that's the hardest part for a lot of us. When I said, "Oh, we're going to build Larry's home," I didn't have all the money to do it. I didn't have all of the contractors lined up to build it. I didn't even have a builder. I mean, but we were going to build this home, and I just kept talking about it. I kept presenting it. I kept believing and I just started going in different directions by what I felt in discernment, and things started coming our way. And then, you don't take every opportunity just because it's there. You have to test the spirit with truth, spirit and truth. You want to make sure that it aligns with what you're doing. And here's a good one. I had an agency that wanted to partner with Just Believe with Larry's home, and they wanted me to create an LLC and put the property in the LLC and take the property away from Just Believe. Now, in good conscience, it sounded like a good idea, But the reality was is we were losing an asset to the organization that could help the organization create other things, and I knew it wasn't a good deal for us. So we declined the thing because, again, just because an opportunity arises doesn't mean that you have to take every one of it. You know, who's it from and what it's going to be. Some people are looking for opportunities for themselves to prosper, but it wasn't about prosperity. It was about honor and respect and dignity. And that's how I approach everything that we do. A great example I would say is my new administration building. I started towards the end. I had one offer for the administration building to move downtown, and I really didn't want to move downtown because of all the opposition I have in Toms River. Every time I'm working in Toms River, I get harassed or bothered by the township from how it was a few years ago, where I was honored. I got a proclamation, you know, always respected by the township. Now it's a little bit more on the outside of things. So I was really optimistic about moving into the downtown Toms River area. Then all of a sudden, I got a phone call from this guy, and he called me like three times. He's like, I got a place for you. I got a place for you. I got a place for you. I want you to, and I'm like, all right, dude, calm down. I'll come and look. So we go and look, and it's this dance studio, and he, he's like, I got this studio. You can have it for the same rent that basically that you rent from the other place. And I looked and I was just like overwhelmed, like, man, it needs a lot of work. It smells like mold in here. I'm not sure if I want to do this. I said, let me talk to my board and get back to you. And he says, okay. And I didn't get back to him right away. And then he calls me again and he pursues me again. He's like, listen, I got another place for you. I got this place, come down, take a look at it. I think it's going to work for you. It's going to work for me. He says, let's take a look at it. So I go in, I go see it. It's a standalone building on 211 Center Street. I walk in, the walls are blue, perfect setting. We're by ourselves. It has a shower for my clientele to take showers. And I just walked in and he says, you can have it for the same rent that you're paying now. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. He says, I want to help you. He's like, you help so many people and you've helped people with me. He says, I want to pay it forward because of who you are. And I was just like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. He's like, you really do a lot of great work, Paul, and your organization and who you are. He's like, and you get beat up a lot sometimes, He says, but he says you persevere through everything, all the adversity that you deal with. He says your organization deserves a space and a place where you can be. So I brought it back to the board, and the board's like, okay,
Mhm.
let's do it. So you don't know. It's just and even like our thrift store, when I first moved into our thrift store, the owner, his mom was next door, and he wanted me to move in next door, but I wasn't ready yet. And we moved into the little store, and there must have been 5 different stores that have gone in that store in 5 years that I lived there or been in the place I was. None of
Mhm.
them stayed. And when it came time for us to get ready to move over next door, guess what was available? The next door.
Story.
And we're there now.
Mm.
So that's walking by faith, not by sight, is believing that God has a plan and we have to be patient through the process. And, that's how I like to move. I don't like to move based on what I think it should be. I want to make sure that it's supposed to be, and I've been blessed enough to understand that by, what I see happening around us. And it's been an honor and privilege to be able to walk by faith and not by sight. And I'm hoping that as we continue to build Just Believe, more opportunities like that will continue to come.
Great. Yeah. Well, here's a hard hitting question though, I think for you, or maybe not too. Since you walked by faith for so long, I mean, what's one of those points where your faith was tested? One of those points where you just wasn't sure what was going to happen next.
Oh, it happens all the time. Believe it or not, I mean, it's hard, and one of the hardest things with nonprofit world is grants, and finances coming in. We always, that's the hardest part. We're community based basically. We're a public charity, but we're really supported by the community. We don't really get a lot of heavy grants. We're supported by the state, which we're so proud of. Being supported by the state. But a lot of our funding comes from private donors. Because they see what we're doing. So. That's the real truth. The grassroots part of Just Believe is what we're about. And I think that's what I think that's why we kind of stay on the arm's length from certain things because of that, because we're not um, a, like a corporation type organization. We're more of that grassroots, like ruddy, like in your face type organization. Like, we're going to find out how we're going to help this person. If you say no, we're going to somebody else. And that's what people don't like. And if you ask questions, boy,
Got some answers though.
yeah, well, it creates waves too, because people
Yeah,
don't the people don't like being questioned. They like to just say what they have to say and just keep it moving. And when you ask questions like, "Hey, why don't we have that?" or "Why shouldn't we do that?" or it's like, "Well, what do you mean? What are you trying to get at?" It's like, "Well, no, I'm just trying to figure out like what is the best avenue for the clients that we're trying to serve and the population that we're serving." And when you start asking those questions, sometimes it gets the some of the rooms that we get into, it gets a little hot but we're not doing it to make it hot. We're doing it because we want to get to the root of the problem. So,
right.
that's what I do see a lot of. So hopefully that'll change when years to come. More people will open up to talk about the problems we're facing instead of, like you said earlier, everybody patting each other on the back saying how great of a job we're doing. I think we can always do better too.
Definitely. Well, you know, for people that want to support, you're doing a lot of work. Everyone's everyone's a landlord that can give out cheap rent, I guess. But there's lots of ways that people can help, right? What are some of the, I guess, general ways? I know everyone kind of donate money, maybe send in some canned food or something like that. That's the kind of low hanging fruit, right? But what are the more the specifics? Are there any sort of items that you're in higher need of? Are there people that you need certain roles filled? What are the more specifics that you could use right now beyond just a standard donation of money or food?
I mean, one of the biggest needs right now is one bedroom apartments in Ocean County, that we need, and giving people opportunities for that a second chance, some people deserve a second chance, and some people you'll give a second chance to and they might not make it, but that's the risk we take when we help people. I think that one bedroom, finding one bedroom rentals, if there's any landlords out there that have them, I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, of course, donations are always welcome. We have a thrift store, obviously, that is in the Aldi Shopping Plaza in Tom's River, 734 Route 37 West, unit number 6, open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 5. Great place to support our organization, come in and have a great experience helping our organization, but also support a great cause when you buy stuff from the store. So that's one way they can support, instead of just some people don't like to just donate money. Some people want to see the tangible side of it. And our Facebook tells the tale, of what we're doing in our community. We just finished out this Friday that just passed, and we had an awesome gift auction, sold out, over 250 people for our third time in a row. We put it up in a week and it's sold out. And it just shows that people are all about one gift auctions. But this time I did something a little different, and we went to each table, and I thanked every person at the table for supporting us. I just wanted people to know that their support is valuable to us. And their donations are at work with Just Believe. As I said earlier, with statistics, with how many people we got into housing, last year we serviced or served 412 people that were facing homelessness or in homelessness. Did we get every person out of homelessness? No, but that's how many calls came in for help. That's a lot of people calling in at one time that need help in Ocean County, and we need to do better. It's sad that we can't figure out a better system than what we have now to get it to where people can get the help they need. And the biggest need is um, a homeless shelter in Ocean County. Not supportive housing, not a bunch of little houses bought in throughout the residential areas. A building that will support the homeless and take care of their needs with medical, just like they had in the rescue mission Atlantic City, where they brought the interns in from the hospital to help out and do a little medical thing. You need that. You need those kind of things in our communities, and especially Ocean County, how big it is. Where's the right place for it? Anywhere that it is available right next to a hospital would be fine. There's a lot of land that's open. We have a lot of open space. Um, they're building, like I said earlier, they're building a lot of buildings for WIC and this and that, but we can't find a way to build a building for the homeless. It needs to happen. It needs to happen. And whether society likes it or not, we still have a an undesirable population that needs our help. um, and they need our help because they're there. That we have poor people in our land. We always have throughout Ocean County, throughout New Jersey, and throughout the United States. So it's something that I think that we as a society need to continue to build on. And if you have land out there, or if you have a building and you want to donate it to Just Believe, we'll talk. I'm all about it. But those are some of the things, I guess.
All right. And as you can tell from this podcast, Paul is very crafty. If you have something else you want to donate, he'll find a way to use it. Well, so I mean, in conclusion, this is like I said, one hell of a roller coaster you've been on. You've been you've been riding, you've been building, and helping other people get through their roller coasters of life as well too. So I wanted to thank you for getting started with Just Believe and everything you've done. Thank you for coming on, joining me for this Veterans Day as well. So it's kind of fitting that we had this today for all the work you've been doing with the veterans as of late too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, happy veterans to all the veterans out there. I mean, we put up some posts this morning for our veterans, and yesterday was Larry's birthday. He's born the day before Veterans Day, and we said
Happy birthday, Larry,
happy birthday in heaven, brother.
sir. All
You
right,
still owe
thank
me,
you,
brother.
and thanks again, Paulie. All right,
You're
have a good
welcome.
one.
All right, take care, bro.